Hi everybody, this is Kelly from Styring and I want to welcome you all to Cellar Hunt. We are here today. It's a beautiful day at Styring. Let me turn my camera real quick. Hello. Hey, there you are. So it's a beautiful day here. Rain intermittent, it's sunny, but it's a nice kind of 70-ish temperature with a slight breeze. It's a really beautiful day on the farm. I want to thank Jillian for helping me with the chat technology. She is not actually with me today. She's in a remote location, so she'll try to answer any questions that you have. Any questions that she cannot answer, she will alert me to follow up with you later. The key difficulty for me with chat and Zoom is that my eyesight isn't good enough to read it from the distance required to frame this shot. So now you have all the dark secrets of Cellar Hunt in front of you as well. So this evening we're going to be discussing food pairings with Pinot Noir. Probably the most important thing to keep in mind about that is that I am not a chef. I am definitely not a professional preparer of food. I feel like a semi-professional enjoyer of food. I've been enjoying fine food with wine for more than 30 years. So I feel like I have a pretty good feel for that, what I enjoy. And then I also have a pretty good sense of what our guests enjoy because I prepare most of the food. Prepare or assemble being the key word. I am definitely not a chef. So what I've done to kind of kick off this conversation today is I've pulled our very best Pinot Noir that we're featuring right now. This is our Wit Reserve 2015. Wit Reserve is an interesting wine for us because it is selected from our very finest barrels. What that means though is we don't have one every year. And when we do, it's usually outstanding. So we don't separate our Pinot Noir by the block within which they're grown or the specifics of the elevation. We bring it all the fruit in, we barrel it all up, and then we start tasting the barrels over time as the wines are topped each month. So every month when we top the barrels, we taste the wines. Coming toward the end of that, when we think we're ready for bottling, we really feel like the wine is mature and ready to go. We try to designate our signature, so Styring signature. That's very much a Ribbon Ridge terroir exemplar kind of wine. Then we move up a level in, I guess, intensity or smoothness and roundness and just overall bigness, and that's our estate. And so we always have the two, and that's fairly simple. But sometimes there's a barrel or two just blows your mind. And so we separate that into Wit Reserve. Some years it might be 2 barrels. And when that happens, only our club has access to it. Sometimes it might be more than that. And then we have additional to sell or even enjoy on our own, which is awfully nice. This is the 2015. So in 2015, this wine scored 96 points in Wine Enthusiast. But what's most important to us is what you think. And people do give us a lot of good feedback about this wine when they're on site. So 2015, oh yeah, it's pouring beautifully right now. Sorry, I got a little distracted by the wine in my hand. So 2015 was a very warm weather year, which led to some early harvest in the valley. Many people picked in September. We're fortunate that up on the ridge, the vine maturity and the weather conditions keep the sugars under control during that kind of heat and the acids high. So we actually weather pretty well through that later harvest heat, not to be confused with late harvest, but later in the harvest season heat. This allows us to hang a little bit longer and wait for flavors. So Steve always makes sure that he's satisfied with sugars and pH and all the other things that are fundamental to making a great wine, but then he judges the flavor by taste. And he selects the harvest date based on that. So we very much had all those opportunities open to us in 2015. It's always at some risk of bunch rot. So we may lose fruit if we get late rains and birds. So the birds really start to get hungry, especially if everyone else is picking and we're kind of the last man on the ridge often. So we lose a bit to birds, but we think that sacrifice is worth it because it makes the wine just that much more full and rich and flavorful for you. So on this one, what Wine Enthusiasts noted most about it was how balanced and integrated the wine is. So it has a very full blackberry note. The aromatics in it are prominent vanilla and a little bit of black pepper that you can kind of get in the back of your sinuses. And like most Pinot Noir, a lot of the flavor happens on the back palate. So you're getting a lot of blackberry, a lot of vanilla. And a lot of that is from new oak. That's completely coincidental, but you would think that a repeated coincidence might suggest a pattern. So every time that we make Wit Reserve, it has a pretty prominent new oak profile. So we don't start out that way by saying this barrel is going to be wit, we're going to put it in new oak. It just kind of works out that way. But I think that's a fundamental learning about what we prefer and how that expresses itself in the wines that we make for you. So the next thing that I want to do is address kind of what wines might pair well with any Pinot Noir. Now, I don't want to be too specific to this taste profile with that vintage. I don't think my palate is sophisticated enough to do that. And I think most of you might just benefit from some pretty simple tips about how foods pair well with wines. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to make this nice and big for us so we can all see it, I hope. I went in the cellar and I pulled the wine and I tasted it for you. Ta-da. So what's important as we start to think about pairing foods with Pinot Noir is that Pinot Noir can be overpowered, blunting some of those subtle characteristics. So it has a lot of beautiful subtlety, but go easy on the intense flavors. If you're going to be serving Thai or Indian food, I would certainly steer you for Thai and lemongrass toward more of our Riesling profile, and maybe our white Pinot Noir profile. And if you're going to have Indian food or a big steak, I might steer you toward our Petit Verdot or Cabernet Sauvignon blends. But for Pinot Noir, I personally think that a lot of the flavor happens on the back of the palate and even the sides of the throat. So the sensations that some foods cause there are similar in a way to how I taste Pinot, and so I think they pair really well together. These tend to be on the funky end of the spectrum, and I'm not going to be more specific than that. I think you can figure it out. Things like truffles, mushrooms, lamb, cheeses that are not strong but have a definite flavor commitment like Gruyere. So let me take you through just a couple of things that we serve in the winery. So I make a simple mushroom remoulade. It's a super cool, sophisticated term for sauteed mushrooms. I chop them really fine. I add garlic. Sometimes I add onions. I usually saute in canola oil because I don't want a lot of different or additional flavors, although some people prefer butter. Because I'm serving at room temperature, the oil tends to stay more stable, where the butter could get a little congealy if you let it sit out. Herbs of your choice. I don't mess around too much with herbs. Again, I like kind of a clean characteristic. Once it's cooked, I'll drizzle it with truffle oil. I don't prefer truffle oil after it's been cooked. I really prefer to use that in its raw form. And then we serve it at room temperature or slightly higher. We've been known to put it in a crock pot and serve it next to a basket of crackers. That's super messy. There are probably better ways to do it than the way we do it. And you see in the picture, it does have some parsley in it, I think. So that's not going to add a lot of flavor. It's going to bring a little color to it. And it's served over a warm brie. So if you're serving it at home, again, it's going to be pretty messy, but you can probably manage that at home. For us, when we have a number of visitors coming through, it's one of our messier choices. So we have to know what we're getting into when we start. The next thing that you can do is take that same remoulade, and then I combine that with a tip that I learned on Tasty. Now, I don't know about you, but I get a little mesmerized by the Tasty videos, the Tasty website. They're all shot from this kind of over-the-shoulder point of view of the creator of whatever it is they're making. And even with the sound down, they're pretty entertaining. So this particular one I thought was genius because they simply used crescent rolls, which are really a pedestrian food that I admit to loving dearly because they have a pretty high sugar content and a pretty high salt content and pretty high fat content, and absolutely nothing missing from that in terms of satiating flavor. So you lay them out in a star pattern and then just spoon the filling around the circle that's made in the center. And then fold the triangle to make kind of a round bun. I bake it 15 minutes, 350. Everything's cooked, so you just want to make sure the bread is cooked and brown and toasty and not raw inside. So it may take less than that for your oven. You could cook it shorter at a higher temperature. I saw that on the website too. Then I cut it into slices and serve warm. So the one on the left, because the photo is not as delicious, you know that's my photo and not a professional photo. But we do cut it and serve it. I pop it in a toaster oven for just a couple minutes before I bring it out and serve it with tongs. It's a little messy, but not as messy as the remoulade when it's just loose. The next thing you can do with it, and you can, this is again my photo because it's a terrible photo, is I use frozen pie crust as my pastry base. So I don't mess around with making puff pastry or making pie crust, but I can fill it like nobody's business. So I made these little tarts with the mushroom mixture, popped them in the oven for probably the same 15 minutes or so at 350 or 400, and they're terrific. Now these are much less messy than anything else. It takes a little bit more filling, so I have to make more filling to feed as many people as the other two recipes. So lots of things that you can do with this one pretty simple mushroom inspired dish that goes well, and truffle, I guess, as well. It has those two flavors together that pairs beautifully with the Pinot Noir. The next thing that we've had a lot of success with is lamb meatballs in a Pinot Noir reduction sauce. So I actually experimented with our Pinot Noir as well as a couple of other wines that I had laying around, and I'll be honest, after it's reduced this much, didn't taste a lot of difference. So I think you can use many different red wines that you have on hand to do this. Because again, I'm feeding a good many people, and my recipe was probably 3 pounds of each type of meat that you see there. I cut it with turkey. Turkey is going to be a little less expensive than lamb, and because it doesn't have a lot of its own flavor, it's going to take on the lamb characteristics. Any meat that has that slightly funky flavor to it is going to go really well with Pinot Noir. So that includes lamb, that includes venison. That includes, in some cases, bison or buffalo, although the bison and buffalo that we buy is farmed so well that while it's not sweet like beef, so a sweeter meat, I think, would go better with a bigger wine. This is going to have this buffalo that we eat has a little bit more subtlety to it, and I think it pairs well with the Pinot Noir as well. So in this case, you simply mix the ground meats together. I put in breadcrumbs, but the last time I made it, I experimented with a falafel mix, which is a garbanzo bean dehydrated dry mix that you mix with water to make Lebanese falafel. It was fantastic because it had lots of cool, again, those kind of dusky spices that you feel more in the back of your palate. An egg to hold it all together, garlic, salt, pepper if you want to make it taste, make it into little balls, maybe an inch across, and then I bake them turning once. 45 minutes is probably a bit long, but sometimes when you're serving food to others, you want to be conservative. So if I was baking these at home for my family, I might cut that and use a thermometer just to make sure I got to the right temperature. And I would always Google that to remind myself what was the right temperature, because different meats require different temperatures to be safe. For our winery, I definitely would go the full 45 just to make sure they're really, really cooked all the way through. Then I take the wine, about 2 cups, makes ½ a cup of sauce. So you just reduce it down by boiling it on the stove, and then add, again, garlic, pepper, salt. That's kind of my trio that I prefer on just about anything. And then pour it over the meatballs. I put these in a chafing dish, and they were fine for a few hours, as long as you rotate them, keep them moist, and make sure that they stay at a good temperature, good safe temperature for serving. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is cheese. You know, we serve all of our cheeses from Trader Joe's. So you see in front of you the Trader Joe varieties that we serve. And there's 2 different ways to, in my opinion, to think about cheese with Pinot Noir. The first, oh, sorry, I'm gonna have to enjoy some of this wine before you. I can smell this wine all the way from sitting on the table. So I had to take a break and enjoy that. So on the left-hand side, what you see is what I call cheese plus. So this is cheese that has other things in it. So of course, the 2 things that I would look for in it is mushrooms. So the top is a mushroom brie, and I serve that a little bit warmed. That's tricky because it can go south on you fast. It becomes a puddly, greasy mess if you don't watch it really closely. So sometimes it's better to actually wrap that in puff pastry so it holds it together and it doesn't get away from you. But if you can watch it really closely, just slightly warmed and gooey, that's going to be beautiful with Pinot Noir. And the other is what they call Italian truffle cheese. The name of that cheese is complete nonsense. There is nothing called Italian cheese. You know, that's just ridiculous. But it's sort of a soft-ish, mozzarella-ish cheese. So it doesn't have a lot of flavor itself, but with the shaved black truffles in it, it delivers a lot of those same aromatics, of that same kind of back of the nasal passages, sides and back of the palate that are really gonna pair well with Pinot Noir. So again, the truffles are carrying the weight with that. And then on the other side, you have what we would call nutty cheeses. So cheeses that have a slight nutty overtone. Now, if you've eaten here recently, you know that we don't serve nuts. It just became a safety issue. And there's so many other foods that we can serve. We said, you know, let's just stay away from nuts. And that way we don't have to decide, you know, who's eating what and what the issues are. Also, they're kind of hard. People can break their teeth. There's lots of great reasons not to serve nuts in a tasting room. But a nutty essence in a cheese is terrific. So we really enjoy the cave-aged Gruyere and the Comté from Trader Joe's. They're both a little salty as well. I tend to reserve salty pairings for maybe our Riesling or a white Pinot Noir. I think that kind of high acid goes well with salt. But these flavor, a little goes along, fairly intense cheeses, and they're sort of semi-hard cheeses too, so that texture is really pleasing when you're eating it. And you can even eat it without a cracker. And then my very favorite is the Bosc. So I have almost no idea what a Bosc cheese is, but I know that when visitors come, if you don't finish that Bosc, I'm going to take it home and I'm going to have that with whatever half bottle of wine you've left for me in the tasting room, and that's going to be like my appetizer before dinner. I really prefer the Bosc cheese shaved, really thin. So a really thin slice of Bosc and a little Pinot Noir, which brings me kind of to the last principle of food pairing and wine pairing, and that is that the idea is to savor each of these things. So to really savor and enjoy the foods while you're enjoying the wine. So put a little bit of the thinly sliced cheese on your tongue and then enjoy a little bit of the wine. It's not about eat and wash it down like you would an iced tea with a burger. It's a slightly different thing. So I'm going to stop sharing now and just come back and say hello and let you know that that's what we have for you today. Keep in mind that, you know, Pinot Noir is a subtle wine. You want to pair it with things that are subtle. You want to pair it with things that activate, store the same areas of the palate. You want to, in my opinion, you want to find something that's easy to assemble that makes you look like a genius. And that's what I try to do. I think there's no downside to looking like a genius at any possible time. I also wanted to let you know, actually, I want to share a little bit more, if I can get my screen share to work, a little more about the wine. So the 2015 Wit Reserve, as I mentioned, is a 96 rating. It's $75 per bottle. We have complimentary shipping on cases right now. So if you'd like us to ship a case to you, that shipping cost is on us. And a 20% discount for club members, especially if you're picking it up. That delights us to no end. So let me stop sharing again and go back to the video. So I want everyone to know that we're continuing to do trunk pickups this weekend. So this is Friday, Cellar hunt tomorrow from 12 to 3 on Saturday, and every Saturday for the foreseeable future, we're going to open our drive-through. We put in place a touchless pay station, so you don't have to purchase in advance. I know a lot of wineries to pick up, you have to pay in advance and then you can go by and they'll put it in your trunk. You can roll right up, you're 20 feet from us. You can tell us what you want. We ring it up, you put your card in, close your window back up, and we put it in the trunk for you. So we've been piloting that for the last 2.5 weeks, working perfectly. And so we're super excited to continue that through the summer. So you can come and purchase Styring wines on site without leaving your vehicle. We are evaluating other ways to open for the summer, and we will keep you up to date as those decisions are made. But right now, that's the only decision that we've made. Again, we're offering complimentary shipping on cases. And, you know, as the summer progresses, we are all going to learn together. The one thing that we do know when we think about pairing with wine is the very best accompaniment to any fine wine is a very good friend. So find someone you love, raise a glass, and enjoy each other's company. Good company makes any wine taste better, and that's fundamental belief here at Styring. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a good evening. Bye now.